Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of our series of artist talks for the Kenojuak Ashevak Memorial Award shortlisted artists. My name is Heather Campbell. I'm originally from Inuit Nunangat, and I currently live in Northwest River, Labrador. Although we are all joining remotely from across North America today, I would like to acknowledge the land on which the Inuit Art Foundation is currently located. It is on the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, the original owners and custodians of this land. Today, this place is home to many, including a diverse urban Indigenous community of Inuit, First Nations, and Métis. On May 19th, 2023, the Inuit Art Foundation announced the shortlisted artists for CAMA in conjunction with the opening of Ananata Unikangi, Our Mother's Stories. This group exhibition at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, WAG Kamayuk, which runs until November. This is the first year that CAMA includes a special exhibition for the shortlist, thanks to the exceptional support of RBC Emerging Artists. In addition to the exhibition, each artist shortlisted for the award receives a $5,000 cash prize. This evening, we have the pleasure of listening to Takalik Partridge speaking with sculptor Billy Gauthier.
Hi, I'm Takalik Partridge. I am a curator and artist and writer. I work for the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto, and I am based in Ottawa. I'm originally from Kenojuak. So happy to be with you today and talk to Billy about his amazing work. Billy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Billy Gauthier. I'm an Inuit artist, a carver from Northwest River, Labrador, originally born in Goose Bay, Labrador. I've been carving since 1996. I think that's the year that I sold my first piece. So I've been doing this for quite some time now.
Wow. So when you were a kid, was this something that you aspired to? Because I remember when I was a kid seeing carvings and stuff on TV, but not really thinking of it as something that I could do, just sort of people used to do that.
Yeah, well, the way I see it is, when I was a kid, I knew I wanted to be some sort of an artist. Because I was always really creative. I was drawing a lot when I was a kid. I was making different things like bow and arrow, and I made a whole bunch of different things when I was a kid. Always creative. So I knew I wanted to do something creative. I knew I wanted to be an artist, but I really didn't know what kind. Drawing is what I started off with. But then after a while, I seen my cousin, John Terriak, his work, and I seen he was able to make a living off of it. And I thought, this is something that's amazing, but it's stone. I'm not going to be able to carve out a stone. I thought it'd be really cool if I could, but I just didn't see it as being a really feasible thing until I was invited over to his workshop one day, and I watched him carve for a little while, and he gave me my first piece of stone. And as soon as I seen him removing the stone in the way that he was, and I understood then that it wasn't impossible. I guess as soon as I saw it became a possibility for me. And I guess I made my first piece that night and been carving ever since.
When you were touching the stone, or when you were first working with the stone, did you feel like it was kind of you had a connection to it?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I did have a connection, but that connection, unfortunately, at first was a little bit more frustration than anything. But then after a while, after using the stone for a while and understanding how every time that a piece broke, it was not the stone's fault, it's my fault. You start to learn about the stones and different materials that you work with, and the more you learn about them, it's like listening to a friend, a person without any ears, or that doesn't listen to the conversation of the friend is having with them. They don't really have any kind of relationship. Well, the same thing with the material. I wasn't really I was basically just listening to the way the material was, or listening to what the material wanted to become, what it would allow me to be, you know, what was too much, you know, to really put on the material. Sometimes it would break, and I guess that was its way of yelling at me. And in the end, I got to kind of know the material better because of this.
Do you find like if you get frustrated with the material that you're working with, it kind of reacts, or it will tend to break or get wrecked easier?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like having a kid. You can have an idea of what you want that child to become when they're older, but you can only push so hard. You could eventually, you know, like if the child doesn't want to become that, it won't become that. It's the same idea with a carving. If it doesn't want to become it, it won't, no matter how hard I try. And instead of just throwing the piece out and saying I'm not the right person to work on this, I just got to change my ideas.
So your work is with many kinds of stone, many kinds of materials, which is a little bit different than what people consider to be traditional Inuit carving. How did you move into working with those different materials, and what are the different materials other than soapstone?
Yeah, well, I started off with soapstone, and then I think the next stone I was introduced to was serpentine. And our serpentine, I think our soapstone is relatively soft. Sometimes a really soft soapstone, you can scratch it with your fingernail. But then I started using a little bit of serpentine, which is a beautiful local stone. And our serpentine is a little bit harder than in a lot of other places. It's closer to like a marble in hardness. So when I first started working with that, again, the whole frustration thing kind of came back again, because I didn't know what to do with it, right? I didn't know how to remove the material. But then after a while, I learned a few new techniques and tools I could use. And so that kind of started working with those harder stones. But then I was given some other materials like mammoth ivory. I was given that a few years back by a friend of mine, Alex Kuznetsov. And I fell in love with this material. It's traditionally, it wouldn't be a material that would be found and utilized by Inuit in Labrador, but it was found by me at one point, so I'm going to use it. It's incredible. It's an honor, really, and privilege to be able to use such old materials with such great character. And yeah,
does it smell bad?
Yeah, but surprisingly, I think fresh ivory smells probably even worse than the older stuff. But nothing's worse than caribou antler.
Yeah.
Oh, it's disgusting.
So the pain they have to go through makes the value of the work even more.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I first started carving, my mother hated the stuff.
Yeah.
She liked the end product, but anytime that I was walking in the house with my dusty clothes on, she definitely complained.
Yeah. So, like, there are some other artists. I'm thinking of David Rubin Filkin, for example, who are also known for using other materials like alabaster and hard stones. Do you find that you have some kind of relationship with those art? I mean, I know he's a lot older, he's a different generation, but do you find that you have some kind of relationship with those artists who kind of went outside what was sort of considered the norm of Inuit sculpture?
Yes, absolutely. Those are often the artists that I'm going to, in some ways, try and emulate the most, because they're the ones who were the originators of certain ideas and styles, of art. They were out of the box thinkers, and anytime you're thinking out of the box, you're either going to hit a home run, or you're going to get unfortunately usually a really bad miss. And so these are the people that hit the home runs. So I mean, they're David Rubin. I mean, his work is phenomenal. So yeah, I definitely look at what he's done and understand that he helped pave the way for artists like myself.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about your piece that kind of relates to this award. So you're shortlisted for the Kenojuak Ashevak Memorial Award. Could we share an image of this work? So what is this work called?
This is called Swimming Loons, and a tribute to Kenojuak. And I'm very sorry, unfortunately, because I never learned to speak Inuktitut as a child, and still can't speak Inuktitut. Unfortunately, my pronunciation is horrible. So I just got to get that out there right away. But she's always been a huge inspiration to me and to really Inuit artists across the board. She's her images, especially her prints of owls and different bird figures, to me, some of the most iconic and beautiful images ever created in Inuit art. So because she's made such an amazing name for herself, because she's promoted Inuit art and Inuit culture so well, I figured that, I mean, she's paved the way for myself. I should make a piece to honor her, really. So I created this piece. So she's most well known for her birds with very elongated fluid feathers. So this piece, I was curious if I could make something like a bird piece with the fluid feathers in a similar way that she does, but just to put it in sculptural form. So I started working away on this piece. I had 2 pieces of muskox horn, and that's what the bird figures are here. And then there's caribou antler in the background, and that's carved to look like almost like a kelp underwater. And then the base is made out of serpentine, that the harder stone that I tend to use around here. And the eyes are they're made of labradorite. So with this piece, I remember having, I think these were a couple of the first muskox horns that I was given. So I had them for a few years before I actually used them. But I can remember eventually, once I decided I'm probably going to use these pieces, I started taping them onto this piece of moose antler before I touched the antler or the muskox at all, and just started taping them in different places on the antler just to see, to me, what looked the most aesthetically pleasing. And once I had them in exactly this position, I thought, oh, I like this. So I started working with it, and I turned the horns into 2 bird pieces, and then I carved out the elongated feathers. But one thing that I've always enjoyed, or I guess I first learned to enjoy from this piece, was when you heat up muskox horn, you can bend it in different ways, similar that people do to like steam bending wood. So
wow.
bending it around, and so I could move the feathers into positions that I normally couldn't do if it was another material. And then, of course, it kept the shape. So, yeah, in the end, I mean, this is one of my favorite pieces, and it really, really means a lot to me, because without her works, without Kenojuak's beautiful artworks and everything she's done for our culture, there's a good chance that this piece would have never been created, that I wouldn't be having this conversation. She's a huge part of what I've, the reason why I've even become an artist.
Amazing. What I find, and I wonder if you have this observation, that like those forms, the like long flowing feathers, or the kind of seaweedy forms, or the crowns on her mermaids with the kind of fronds sort of flowing up and out. or various other forms that she has in her work that make it so iconic and so recognizable. I feel that they mirror the forms of things that are found in the north, found in Inuit environments, like you said, the horn there that you made looks like seaweed, or like on a Mautic pattern, for example, there's the form of the roof of the mouth of a caribou. And it's beautiful, beautiful design that is found, across the north where people wear a Mautic. There's something about those forms that, even though they seem kind of abstract, they're very typically Inuk, and they're very responding to the environment that we come from. And I wonder if you see that in your own work.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably pretty much every aspect of my work is a reflection of the environment that I grew up in, that I've seen. And yeah, I find that really interesting. I'm kind of stuck on what you were saying about the hood being like a similar shape to like the
tail, the akuk.
Yes.
Like if you picture the back of a Mautic.
Yeah.
And then there's a design. The akuk is like a little bit sort of sticks out and then scoops under the bottom. And then there's like a design on it. That is after the roof of the mouth of the and you're a hunter, so you know what that looks like. If you just picture it in your mind.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
I never knew that before. I never heard that. That's really cool. Yeah, I kind of put little things like this as well in some of my works. Some of the bases, especially, you can see like with this base, it's a very fluid form, and that's what I often do. Is whenever I carve a base, it'll be a more fluid form, and that way it's I guess I'm a little bit more free in that portion of it. It can be whatever shape that I want it to be. It doesn't have to necessarily resemble something. And sometimes I'm just trying to get a shape that's to me aesthetically pleasing. But then I end up realizing that, well, actually it is aesthetically pleasing because this shape actually reminds me of this or this or this, and it's in my life. That's something that often has to do with the subject matter of the piece itself. So yeah, that's
what I really appreciate about that aspect of your work is that like every part of the work, even the part that is just the functional part, has attention to detail and has attention to the beauty of the work, and it sort of makes it all more kind of unified and a unit. You might have noticed me waving around earlier. There's a mosquito in here, so. So another thing that you're known for is that some of your work is so incredibly tiny and intricate, and it just looks like it would break if you blew on it. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about this one and talk about that aspect of it?
Yeah, well, I've often, whenever I carve, I try and challenge myself. I try and challenge myself as often as possible. I guess even outside of carving, but especially in carving. And in doing that, I've broken so many pieces. So like what you were saying, it looks like you could blow on this and break it. Well, I know you can definitely drop it and break it. If your thumb hits it when you're carving it, that'll break it. I think I went through 3 or 4 different mosquitoes before I finally had one that stayed together enough to glue it onto this hand. So it's a real challenge at times to work in that scale, but it's like climbing a mountain. If it's a short little mountain, yeah, I'm sure it's nice when you get up to the top, but I'm pretty sure that the higher the mountain and the more difficult to climb, the more you're going to enjoy the view at the end. And really that's what this here is. It's kind of the opposite. It's the smaller, the better the view, for me anyway. So yeah, it's a pain in the butt at times, But in the end, it feels great to know that you're able to do something that you really weren't sure you could.
So what's the material of the mosquito? Are they both the same material or different materials?
No, so the hand, which was modeled after my own hand, because I see with this piece, I was always fascinated with bugs, and I used to let them land on my hands and just let them bite me because I knew that was the best way to get a really good view at them. So with this piece, I knew I wanted to carve a hand, so then I used my left hand as my model, and I carved the hand out of anhydrite, and then the mosquito is carved out of moose antler. And the reason why I chose moose antler is because out of any antlers, I find that the moose antler tips are a little bit more dense, so it's easier to carve finer details without them cracking off on you.
And is that a moose that you harvested yourself?
Unfortunately, no. I've got to admit, I've never actually hunted moose myself, although there are moose here in Labrador. There really weren't as many in the past. And in the past, we used to be able to hunt caribou. And as far as I'm concerned, caribou tastes better than moose. So that's what we always hunted. But now that we, unfortunately, there's a moratorium, a ban on the moose hunt, or sorry, caribou hunt. So now we can only hunt moose around this area. So it might be something I'll be doing myself in the future.
So you're not scared of bugs?
Oh, well, it depends what you mean by that. Do they? Yeah, they really do. They probably bother me just as much, if not more, than other people. But it's just the things that I love to do. I love them so much that I'm willing to put up with them. And yeah. So like whenever I go hunting or as hunting, sorry, whenever I go fishing in the summertime, you know, when I'm on a river, often the best places for fishing have the most bugs. And to me, it's kind of bittersweet because I mean, nobody enjoys getting bit by a bug. But if it wasn't for those guys, then these areas in the rivers probably would have been fished out a long time ago. So really, mosquitoes, these bugs that keep so many people away, I look at them as a blessing. Plus, of course, they feed a lot of the animals around the areas that I'm fishing in. So in the end, I both love and hate the mosquito flies.
Speaking of Kenojuak, I know that she and like I talk about this all the time because I find it so fascinating, or also very true for Inuit. I know that she didn't value her artistic career and the fact that she was famous even in her lifetime more than she valued fishing for her family or making stuff for her family. Or any of her other activities that were important in her life as an Inuit. I wonder if that is, and I feel like I know the answer, but we're on a webinar, so I have to ask, is that something that also is reflected in your life and the way that you live?
I'm sure you do know the answer. Yes. The most important things for me in my life, period. I mean, well, for one is my daughter. I'm gonna throw that out right away. Yes, my daughter is the most important, for sure. But then right next would be the land, the environment, everything that gave life to my ancestors, my culture. In turn, me, my family, so many of the people that I love, they all came from this land, this area. So to me, the land actually probably even more important than myself and than my family is the land, because I mean, it's what gave birth really to us all, especially my artwork. I can't make my artwork without the land. I can't make my artwork without fishing, without hunting. My artwork is a reflection, no different than looking in the mirror is a reflection of me. My artwork is important. The mirror, the reflection, I guess, that I see is important in some ways to myself. But I hope that I'm more important than the reflection. And again, it's the same thing with my artwork. My artwork is quite often about the culture. It's about showing, it's a reflection of the life of a fish, of the life of a seal, of the life of a caribou. And those are the important things. My artwork is just a reflection of that. I can't even articulate it in the way I would really love to be able to. But yeah, it's my art is important to me, but it's secondary compared to the land and the culture, for sure.
That was very good answer.
Thank you.
So you're known as an activist, most especially for the hunger strike that you did to protect muskrat balls, protect your homelands. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for doing that and for standing up for Inuit, even though it's a different region, it's all Inuit land. And from my point of view, like, you know, when I was younger, we didn't really see Inuit doing these kind of protests. Like you see different First Nations doing protests that disrupt things very noticeably. It's not to say that Inuit have not been activists and have not done things, fought very hard for Inuit rights. It's just that I didn't seem to witness it the way that you went about it. How did you get to that point? And did you feel that you were supported by your fellow Inuit?
Well, I guess ever since I was a kid and I learned about climate change and you know different types of pollution out there, I wanted to make a difference in this world, and hopefully a positive one. So let's say this. I guess it was because of my artwork. I knew I started developing a name for myself, and I started getting to meet some very interesting and fortunately, they were very powerful people with big voices, and knowing it just because I got to know these people and you know I stayed in contact with some of them. Once I seen what was going on with Muskrat Falls, I felt like, well, I want to. I feel like I have a megaphone. I've got a voice. And it's not just because of myself, but because of the people I knew and had a good chance to chat with. You know, I figured that because I knew so many of these people that did have a much bigger voice than myself, then maybe I should be doing something to call upon them, to maybe inspire them or get them to speak out against some of the atrocities that are going on our lands, to our lands, to our animals, to our cultures. So yeah, I feel as though because I've got a voice, I mean, I can use it for just myself, or I could use it for the things that I love and believe in. And that's what I'm going to choose to do is use it for for my culture, for my land, for the animals.
And then the second part of my question was if you felt supported by Inuit.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I'm very, 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 very proud to be an Inuk. As a matter of fact, here in Labrador, and this isn't to take away from any other group. I'm not taking away from groups right now. I'm only just giving credit where credit I believe is due for Inuit here in Labrador. But the people who really brought forward the attention about the methylmercury methylmercury contamination with Muskrat Falls was actually the Nunatsiavut government, our government. So the Inuit government here was the ones who actually brought it to the attention of, brought it to the media and hired the researchers from Harvard who did the studies here. So it was Inuit that started this, and then it was the three of us hunger strikers were Inuit. We were all beneficiaries from here in Labrador. And the first people that during the hunger strike decided to storm through the gates and shut the project down. The first people through those gates were Inuit. So yes, I feel supported by my culture, my people. And I've right from the day one that I started becoming an activist and started becoming vocal, I've had great support. It's been amazing.
It must also be very exhausting though.
It is, and it isn't. Because the moment it becomes exhausting, I gotta admit, I jump ship. I run out and start paddling in my kayak, or I start flicking my fishing rod, and or go for a hike. So I'm really fortunate that with the job that I have, I can choose my own hours. Sometimes I give myself a little bit of a kick because I don't necessarily choose the best hours or do it as often as maybe what other people would hope. But the truth is, I do need to run away sometimes. I need to get out there on the land where I'm not, where nothing matters other than what it is I'm doing at the time. It's a great way to just relax and get away from everything. There's no other place on this planet than basically out on the land that can make me feel the way that does. It's just, I'm at ease. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at the time. And yeah, it's nothing. There's nothing like it. There's nothing that can make me feel as comforting as what that does.
The question that I have, I don't know if I know how to ask it properly, but I wanted to look at another one of the artworks, which is the one with the young woman and the sewing.
Mm-hmm.
Like as far as contemporary artists, I work with contemporary artists. Mm-hmm. I also work with like Inuit art from the past. Mm-hmm. And I'm super excited about the work that people are doing today, young Inuit artists, young Indigenous artists, or new Indigenous and Inuit artists who are not necessarily young, but just starting out with their careers.
Mm-hmm.
The way I experience the art world is that a lot of it is about concept, and what is the concept that is, has the strongest voice, or has the smartest idea, or has the kind of like a little bit of a hook in it, so that it's like we're throwing this in your face. And it's not to say that is good or bad. It's just like it seems like this is what the art world wants, is conceptual work. A lot of Indigenous conceptual work leans towards activism and towards the kinds of ideas that you're talking about. and even your experience of needing to be on the land.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, your work is not necessarily in that conceptual realm, although there are wonderful, beautiful concepts.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the concept of your work is to just celebrate Inuit lands, the
Yes.
animals, everything that is from our lands. And then alongside that is your actual real life activism. And I don't know if that's a question, but it's just like an observation that I have. I'm just wondering about, like, so for example, this work here, the young woman and the sewing, her sewing kit and the secret needles that are inside the sewing kit. You know, from the outside, from somebody who's not Inuk, like looking at that would be, oh, this is so beautiful, so stunning, and it's so smart and amazing that there's these secret needles. But as an Inuk, I can read it a little bit different in that there is something of your activism in there. Mm-hmm. For example, showing the Inuit facial markings, showing that this person is proud of their culture. Mm-hmm. There's a fish there. Inuit women and fishing, that's like everything.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's a question or if you have a response to that, but it's an observation that I just sort of had going in my mind.
Yeah, well, I guess, like, I've been asked before why it is that I carve in the way I do, and why it's always these more or less just happy traditional themes, and why am I not carving, like a car, and why am I not carving anything, a coffee cup, or more modern things. How do I say this? Those more modern things, I'm not saying that Inuit don't have any rights to use them or anything. Obviously, I mean, I'm drinking out of a mug, I wouldn't consider this in itself something Inuit. It wasn't invented by ourselves. It's something that's very foreign to the culture. And what I'm constantly trying to show is the beauty of the culture, like our actual, like the things that our ancestors did that were, how do I say this? They were, these are things that our ancestors did that helped us survive within nature and live alongside nature, and live alongside, these beautiful things in our environment. I could show activism in the ugly way, or I shouldn't say activism in the ugly way, but I could show the world in an ugly way and then say this needs to be changed. But often, if you show things that are ugly, at least I've noticed then people really don't want to look at them. And the more beauty that I can put into this, and I'm not lying with any of these, I'm showing this woman who's sewing the mitten in as beautiful of a way as I can, because that's exactly how I see it. Her sewing this mitten was a beautiful thing. Her displaying her tattoos on her face with pride is a beautiful thing. You have like this little needle case that's in the shape, like you were saying, of a fish, with little hidden needles. I know nobody's, or very few people, if anybody, are ever going to open that up and look inside. But there are little needles carved inside that. This here, it's almost like a microcosm of the culture in itself. The more you look at it, the more you learn about it. And hopefully our culture is attractive to people, because nobody is willing to protect things that they don't love, that they don't care for. So I'm trying to show this in as beautiful of light as I believe it deserves to be shown in, so that people are willing to learn more about our culture, learn more about our peoples, learn more about our lands. I mean, we need protection. Our culture needs protection. We're such a small group of people that encompass such a vast amount of land. There's so few of us. We do need help if we're we're going to be able to actually keep our culture and survive, especially in the north. We need people in the south doing work like exactly like what you're doing, because you're basically being a bridge, for the rest of the world. Without what you're doing, nobody gets to see what I'm doing. So like and if nobody sees what I'm doing and other people like myself are doing around here, then it's just, we go unheard of. Our problems go unheard. So yeah, I guess it's just important for me that people first look at our culture as something beautiful, first and foremost, more important than absolutely anything. Because again, nobody's going to protect anything that they don't find beauty in.
So my question about this one is, because when I was growing up, I was talking about when I was growing up, but like we would hear about Inuit shamans in like old films, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like nobody was actually a shaman. Or like my dad would say, he'd show me like old black and white pictures from like the 1940s, and he'd be like, this person here was known in the community as a shaman, like back when he was a child. But after that, nothing. And, I know it's a very common theme with Inuit artists from across the north to talk about shamans and shamanism. And I'm wondering what it means to you to do work about these old spiritual leaders.
Well, I guess like I was drawn to shamanism, probably learning about it, I should say. I was drawn to it probably a couple of years after I started carving. Before that, I really just didn't understand enough. I just I didn't have as much of a fascination with it until I started to carve. And the more I started to carve, and then I started to learn about the masks. See, I think that's what really drew me in originally, was seeing old Inuit masks. And then I thought, oh, this is really cool, but I don't want to carve one without knowing what some of the meanings are. So I started learning about the meaning behind certain portions of certain masks from different areas. And I thought, well, that's pretty neat. And then I just started learning more and more. And I'm certainly not going to say I'm an expert in Inuit shamanism, but I'm fascinated by it. And to me, the shaman was almost like the scientist of the past. I think they don't really get as much credit for is what they deserve. I think people just thought of them as being just like a wizard, as a mythical wizard. But they were different than that. They were looking at their environment. They were often, from what I've read anyway, they were often some of the best hunters, some of the best at fishing. Some of the, they could predict the weather better than often than the rest. I think a shaman was somebody who was very, very observant, and maybe they couldn't explain through certain through sciences, because they didn't have the sciences to explain how this and that happened in the past. But they were incredibly intelligent people that had a huge effect on our culture, and even the mental health of the people. They often gave hope to people that were sick, and just hope in itself, whether it's even placebo effect or not, it can help people. So I don't think that the shaman was. How do I say this? I should say I do think that the shaman was more important, and deserves much more credit than is given today. it's, to me, it's unfortunate that that shamanism isn't more prevalent through the north today. That it has pretty much disappeared for the most part, in at least most places. But it is something I would like to see, even possibly being revived, at least to a certain extent in the future. I should mention something, since I am talking about shaman. There was a Chukchi shaman that I met one time when I was in Iceland for a big show that they had there. We had indigenous artists from all over the north, and this lady, this Chukchi shaman that I met, I heard that she was going to be doing a healing at a show, and I thought, well, this is almost, I have to admit, maybe this is a little disrespectful, but I thought, oh, this is a little kind of hokey pokey or funny or strange or whatever. And I thought, well, I'm going to go watch anyway. And it just so happened that the night before I went out for a long walk, and because in Reykjavik I couldn't read any of the signs, I was lost. So I was lost for a few hours before I got back to the house that I was staying at. So I ended up hurting my toe, and I already had problems with my toe in the past, getting inflamed, but it was incredibly inflamed at the time. I could hardly walk on it, and I thought, well, this is a chance to go see this shaman and see what it's all about. So there was a group of people in the auditorium waiting for her, and there was a bunch of empty chairs in the front. So I went and I sat down on one of the chairs, and this shaman, she went from person to person. And I remember looking over my shoulder, watching what she was doing. And apparently we were told we weren't allowed to speak when she's performing this. So she came to me, and right away she pointed at my foot, the one that was sore. And I didn't tell her about any of this. And I nodded my head, and she looked at me and she nodded, and then she went like this. And I put my shoulders up. I didn't know what she meant. And then she pointed at my foot, and then she went like this, and I edged my foot closer towards hers, and she put her foot underneath mine and started singing this chant. And she had this piece of baleen, and she was dipping it in water and flicking it. And I remember thinking at the very beginning of this is ridiculous. I'm going to prove to myself how ridiculous this is by nothing happening in the end. But I was wrong. After she was chanting like this, surprisingly, all the swelling in my toe, and I swear I'm not in any way, shape, or form exaggerating, all the swelling in my toe was gone instantly. I've never taken a drug that could actually have an effect that quick in my life. There was no more swelling. The pain was gone. And I thought to myself, like, this is insane. It's just, I have a tendency to believe that this is probably just placebo effect, because I'm a person who is driven by science, but I don't care if it is placebo effect. It changed me faster than anything else has in my whole life. And that really, really got me fascinated with shamanism after. Yeah.
I was going to say, if you share that on Facebook, you could be Facebook famous with Inuit, your fellow Inuit, but it's already been shared on Facebook. We're on Facebook Live. So who knows, maybe a clip is going to show up and go viral. Because, we love those kind of stories.
Yes.
You mentioned that you started carving with your cousin, John Terriak. Artists from Nunatsiavut haven't been as well known as Inuit artists. That's a common refrain, but there are plenty of you, and more and more coming up. I wonder if you were working with younger artists, kind of cultivating new artists, if you're mentoring artists, or if you're still, if you are still being mentored with older artists, although, I mean, you've come to a point in your career where you're very, very good at what you do.
I'm still certainly mentored by other artists in many different ways, different aspects of my life. So I think I'll always have room for learning from other artists. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to teach other artists as well. But I really haven't spent as much time teaching younger people is what I'd like. I think this is something, an avenue I guess I'll move into a little more in my life, especially now that I'm getting some great recognition for my works right now. But I guess one of the reasons why I maybe didn't do it so much in the past is because I wanted to spend a lot of my time out on the land, hunting and fishing, rather than being tied down to maybe scheduled classes where I'm teaching or something along those lines. So that's why I guess in the past I wanted to dedicate as much of my life to practicing traditional parts of the culture as possible. But now that I'm getting a little bit older, I think that is something I'll do more often. So like I say, do a little bit of teaching and still going to do a whole lot of learning.
Mm. Have you ever done any collaborative work, or is there a collaborative project that you really would like to do with another artist?
I really haven't done any amount of collaborative work in the past. It is something I'm interested in. I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous to try because in my life, I'm kind of free to do whatever it is I want, and I'm usually in control fully of my artwork. So I think it would be an interesting learning experience, really, to work alongside and with another artist and learn to compromise. Something I'm not necessarily the best at.
New challenge, new learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Is there something that you would like for me to ask that I haven't asked?
Oh, wow. Jeez.
There's something you want to talk about that we haven't talked about.
If you don't mind, can I ask you something?
Sure. Where did I get my earrings? No.
Out of curiosity, where do you get your inspiration for your artwork?
I think it's very similar to what you say about working with stone.
Mm-hmm.
I think that things want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen properly, then you're able to reveal them.
Mm.
And I've had this conversation with a curator friend that, again, speaking about the contemporary art world, which is like the world that I work in and try to have Inuit recognized in. It's almost a no-no to say something like that, because it's like the artist has to be the genius, has to be the one with the great talent, and the one who is striving to become a star.
Yeah.
Whereas with Inuit creative practices, I think that we really are responding to the life that is already in whatever substances it is that we're working with. So I find that even when we're taking photographs, for example, it's like the photo wants to be a certain way. or maybe several ways. And then if you're lucky, you can be the one to reveal one of the ways that it wants to be.
Yeah. That's, yeah, I look at it in a very, very, very similar way, pretty much the same way. That's,
and then like at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about like materials. The reason I asked you if you find that things go like the material responds negatively if you are frustrated, because something that I know, like working with beadwork, working with string, is that you cannot become angry at string if it tangles, because as soon as you're angry, it's like it's like beyond anything that you're going to be ever able to untangle. But if you're calm and you just like calm yourself down and just like fiddle with it, like fishing nets, you fiddle with it and then it'll relax.
It's like a real relationship.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yelling doesn't usually work.
No. Yeah. So at the beginning, I should have also said congratulations. Did I say that? I don't think I said that. Congratulations. I'm very proud of you. Very proud of the work that you do. Always happy to see it. It's so beautiful and so moving every time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate this. And this has been a great conversation. I mean, I was really nervous at first, but you definitely made it a lot easier.
It's my earrings.
It's definitely.
They're from Anigrania and Kenojuak, just so you know.
They're beautiful. Are they grass?
Yeah, they're Ibigat. So Anigrania, she's an elder from Kenojuak, and when I saw them, I just needed to have those. We have time for questions from participants, from attendees. If anybody has questions, I don't think anybody has questions. We covered it all.
Yeah.
Heather, can you talk about? Okay. Heather's asking. Being on the shortlist. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You ask. Go ahead. You have a mic.
Oh, sure. I was just hoping that you could tell us a bit about how you think being on this shortlist will impact you in your career.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm getting more exposure right now as we speak. So this is a great thing alone, but I got to admit, it's also an ego boost. It makes me feel better about myself. It makes me feel better about my artwork. And really any time that I'm, my feelings about those things are elevated, it's going to have a positive impact. This award, whether I in the end win it or not, I mean, getting this far is phenomenal. The other four artists are they're making waves right now in Inuit art and in art in general. So to be a part of such an accomplished group it feels great. It feels awesome. So yeah, I can only imagine it's going to just boost my career, just like it's doing, I'm sure, right now.
I'm not sure if you know, but our peer assessment committee was made up of Inuit artists. So how does that make you feel?
I think that's great. These are my peers. These are my it's, how do I say this? It's not that I would feel less if if the people that were basically judging who gets this award were non-Indigenous or non-Inuit but it kind of feels extra good knowing that they are. I'm not even really sure how that would work. How do I say this? I think it's very important that it is Inuit that are actually on the jury that are making these judgments, these calls. Yeah, I guess in a way it is important to me. I think too often in the past, really too many organizations really were unfortunately had very few Inuit, that were really running the show. So to know that I'm being judged by other Inuits, it's a big thing. It is a great thing for me. The same idea is having the Inuit Art Foundation, so many of the board members being Inuit. Same idea, I guess, is our Nunatsiavut government and different Indigenous governments throughout the North. It's nice to know that more and more Inuit are taking these jobs and are becoming leaders. And yeah, I think things like this are what's exactly what's going to be great for our culture.
Did you like that answer, Heather?
Love it.
Nobody else has questions. I know there's some artists on here. You all have to have questions. You asked the smart questions so that people who had these questions in their minds, who were too shy, hear about it.
Uh-huh.
Now's your chance.
You can ask me absolutely anything. It doesn't even have to do, even if it doesn't have anything to do with artwork. It's, if anyone wants to ask anything, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, one last question about stinky things. Was the muskox horn stinky?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much every material that's organic, if it was a part of a living thing in the past, you're grinding that, it's going to stink. Well, some things stink a little bit more than others.
I was just reading the article that we put out a couple of days ago about the Bonavista Biennale and the piece that you're going to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering what scares you the most about, or maybe I'm getting the venues mixed up, but the
right.
giant, what is it, whalebone or?
Yes, yeah, it's a really big piece of whalebone skull, and yeah, I'm excited and nervous to carve it. I'm not used to working in something that scale, but so I guess in a way that's what makes me nervous, because I'm not used to it. But then again, that's also what makes me a little bit excited. So I kind of bounce a little bit back and forth between those feelings. But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun actually to work in such a big piece of material. So yeah, carving on a different scale is going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be a challenge, but hopefully in the end it'll work out. I won't leave there until it does.
So there are a few questions in the question and answer box. Sorry, I had the wrong box open. So Ella Nathaniel Alkowitz. How strong do you have to be? So this person is asking two questions. I'll just put them together. How strong do you have to be to carve serpentine? And then any tips for novice artists?
Okay. You don't have to be strong at all. It's not so much about your strength. It's more about the tools that you use. Serpentine is, especially the Labrador serpentine that I tend to use. It's quite a bit harder than most of the serpentines you find in the north. So the files and stuff that I would use, say like on a soapstone, I wouldn't necessarily use on serpentine. So with serpentine, I would say use say carbide, which is quite a bit harder than steel for your just Dremel tool bits or Fordham bits. and if you're going to use chisels or files, then again, carbide is probably your best bet. And for smoothing it off, auto body sandpaper. But it really, it's not that you have to be strong for any of these materials, physically strong. You have to be more mentally strong and resilient, because they're not necessarily going to be carved very quickly. So as long as you have enough mental resilience, you should be able to work right through this, through a new piece in serpentine. But don't even worry about being strong. It's about choosing the right tools. So the harder your tools, usually the better for this material. And we're friends on Facebook anyway, so you can message me in case you're wondering which materials you want to actually, which tools you can use or not.
All of Inuit on Facebook start messaging you.
Yes.
So Lindsay Morehouse said, "Congratulations, Billy. You are an inspiration."
Well, thank you, Lindsay.
And another question we have is Jenny Williams, what is your most favorite piece you have ever made? Good question.
Wow. I'm going to have to say there's a piece called Trapper's Dream. It was my mother's favorite, or is my mother's favorite piece I ever carved. And it was my late grandmother's favorite piece as well. So it was, I think, one of the first few pieces that I sent to Spirit Wrestler Gallery, which is the gallery that's responsible for really boosting my career. But this little piece, little carving, is probably I'd say about 7 or 8 inches high. It was made out of a white anhydrite, so it's a nice white stone. It was of a man holding some fox furs, or is it fox? Yes, fox furs over his shoulder, and he was just kind of walking. And the idea behind that was I never really got to meet my biological grandfather from my father's side. From my mother's side. So I often thought about, like, I wonder what his life was like and what he thought about when he was working out on the trap line, when he was out trapping by himself. Because I know he would be out on the trap line for months and months and months at a time by himself. And I was just thinking, like, what would he do, to keep his mind occupied, to put a smile on his face? And then I started thinking, well, he's probably like anybody else, like if you're out fishing, you want a lot of fish. Well, if you're out trapping, really what you want and what you're dreaming about for the next day is a whole bunch of furs. So that's why I carved this piece. And it's just, it means a lot to me. Like I say, I never actually met my grandfather that I can remember. Although when when I was born, my grandfather was brought to the hospital. He was actually had a heart attack around the same time. So when I was first born, my mother brought me in to see him. And my mother told me that when he was holding on to me, that he just kept playing with my hands and saying that I was going to do great things with my hands. And I've never forgot that story. I've always loved that story. And I'd like to think about what my grandfather thought about. So that's why I made that piece. And that's why it's so incredibly important to me.
That was the right question.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jenny's awesome.
Yeah, that's good questions. Anonymous attendee. Ooh, there's an anonymous attendee. Congratulations, Billy. I'm so happy for you. Did you say that your next project is a whale skull? That's a huge scale. What is your biggest sculpture before the whale skull? Do you already have a vision or plan of what you are going to do?
Well, the biggest piece I ever made and sold would be, it was a narwhal hunt. Uh, it was made out of serpentine. It's probably like I think it weighed 180 something pounds when I first started carving it, and I brought it down to like 130 pounds. So that's I'm not exactly sure the dimensions. Maybe 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet around, as well. But yeah, it was like 130, 140 pounds was probably the biggest piece that I've ever made. And there's so there was 3 whales made out of anhydrite, and then there's 2 kayakers, and they got their harpoons out and they're hunting the whales. So that would be my biggest piece.
And then the person said, sorry, it's Patricia Pace. I didn't mean to be anonymous. So their other part of their question was, do you already have a vision for the big one the skull that you have?
I don't actually have anything, no guaranteed parts of it that I'll be carving in a certain way. I'm coming up with all kinds of different ideas, but until I actually see the material in front of me, I'm not going to have an exact idea of what I'll be doing with it till then. But that's the way I usually work anyway. Like if I was commissioned to produce a piece, I would just start often. Like I might come up with an idea and tell them this is what I'm going to make, but again, the material is going to dictate what it's going to be. So if in the end it's going to change, then it changes. That's why, I don't really do very many commission pieces, and that's one of the main reasons why I don't like to do very many. Because when people have something commissioned, they tend to want to tell you, okay, I would like to have a polar bear, or I would like to have a whale, I would like to have this or that. Sure, I can do that.
I feel like that's so hard. Like, I don't even want to do that for earrings.
No. I mean, for me, if somebody said, I want a Sedna piece, that's pretty much about as far as I want them to go with it. And even then, I'm going to tell them, sure, when I find the right piece, to carve a Sedna out of. And, even then, if they ask for a sketch, I might give them a sketch, but expect that it may change. Mm-hmm. Because again, like nobody's going to dictate my work. I don't even fully dictate my work. The material has the last say. Mm-hmm. So that's why I tend to just want to produce whatever I want to produce rather than commission pieces.
Have you ever done public art?
I haven't actually. Not yet. Just I think quite often, and when you're saying public art, you mean art that's actually like out, say like
installed somewhere in a public place.
Yeah. I don't generally. Most of them go into private collections, although there are a couple of museums that have a few pieces. So I guess you could consider that somewhat public art. But usually, I guess my pieces are delicate enough that really, I mean, you certainly wouldn't want that mosquito on hand to be in the middle of a park somewhere.
Okay, well, if you're interested in it, we'll talk. So, since we don't have any more questions, and since we've already had our lovely conversation, do you think we should maybe wrap things up, Heather?
This has been so fabulous. I think we're going to have to go without the camera for now.
Yeah.
I could listen to the two of you speak like over and over again, like for hours, because it's just incredible to hear and so inspiring. When I decided to move back here to Labrador, I knew Billy was in this town that I moved back to. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait. I'm like, but I'm shy. Should I go down? Like, you know.
Are you guys related?
No, not really. I think maybe by marriage, but that's it. And, oh, there I am. Hi. So just being able to hear him speak about his work right now and knowing that he's being honored in this way, I'm just so pleased.
You got to come to the other talks, Billy, and ask the smart questions to the other artists. Because like now there's an old hat for you now.
I'll definitely look into it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this has been fabulous. And like we said, we actually have some other things coming up throughout the month of June. This was the first of 5 artist talks. So we have next Thursday is Gail Uyagaki Kabluna. Then the week after that, it's Kablusiak. Then on June 22nd, it's Maureen Rubin.
Yay!
Then finally, June 29th, it's Ningiukuluk TV. So come back, everyone. And yes, come prepared with questions because it's really a great opportunity to be able to have these artists at your disposal. So thank you again, Billy. And thank you, Takalik. This has been incredible. Nakamik. Good night, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Billy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Takalik. Thank you, Heather.
See you.
Okay. Bye.
See you.